All right, and we are live. So welcome everyone. This is our final wrap-up for the the Data Analytics and Learning MOOC. We are in week 9, and if you've had a chance to log into the course site, you'll realize week 9 is at best described as sort of a synthesis or an integrative week, where we're giving you an opportunity to start looking at what are some of the things that we talked about throughout the course, and how do those different topics and those different ideas get reflected in the kinds of activities that you are going to engage in, but also how do they relate to each other? Because it really is a set of 4 mini courses that you've gone through, and we want to, for this week at least, give you an opportunity to kind of think through what those types of activities will be. Now, for today's Hangout, there's really just a few things that we'd like to look at today. So 3 points that I'd like to see us go through. So one is just some quick reflection from the folks here on this call. You know, what was something that sort of struck you, or what was particularly interesting for you? Second, I want to look at what are some of the professional societies that exist. Actually, no, before we do professional societies, sorry, the third one will be the professional societies, but the second one would be around what are some topics that we maybe didn't look at, because we did overlook a range of topics, privacy and ethics being just one of those small little ones that we didn't get into much detail on. So that's essentially the agenda today, those 3 things, looking at reflection from the instructors, looking at the things that we missed, the topics that perhaps should be looked at, and then looking at professional societies and next steps for those of you that are interested in doing more work with this. So why don't we start off with Ryan? Any reflections as we wrap up the course?
Sure. Well, first of all, it was nice to have a chance to work with all of you. I thought that this was a really neat experience, very different than the last MOOC I ran. One of the things I thought was interesting was we got some data on the activities from weeks 5 and 6, which were supposed to be, a big improvement on what I did during my Coursera course. In fact, about 200 and change people tried them, but only 4 people finished all of them. So, despite the fact that we actually were trying to make them kind of have a better flow and work better than the ones we did in the last course I did, I think they actually worked a little worse. And so I've got some lessons to learn in design of that. I also think that the fact that only 200 people even started them, part of what that tells you is people kind of got to week 5, they said, oh my gosh, do I really want to use a whole new type of activity and learn a whole new tool? But then after they'd rested for weeks 5 and 6, then week 7 they came back and did all of Carolyn's great stuff. So it's it's been a neat experience. George, should I talk? We're only talking right now about the course itself. We're not talking about future stuff yet, right? Or should I talk about future stuff right now too?
No, let's just talk about a quick reflection on the course, and then we'll look a little bit at topics that we overlooked, and then we'll look at future stuff and professional societies.
So I also thought it was really fascinating, and I'm sure the other folks noticed this as well, that there was so much activity on the Twittersphere, so much activity on Google Groups. The forums of this class mattered less as the only place to talk than I'd seen in my previous course. It was exciting to see kind of things spread out. So this was a really neat experience, and thank you to my co-instructors and to the people in the class for joining us for this.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Carolyn, what are some of your reflections and thoughts?
My people is that I'm actually kind of really sad that this is coming to an end. It's been such a focus for me. We spent so much time thinking about this over the summer, getting ready, and we're so excited to see it launched, and it's been really fun to be involved. It reminds me now, there was a post that somebody asked, I wonder how much time the instructors really spend being involved in this course. And I know that I was very anxiously watching Twitter and the discussion forums because I really wanted to know where we're at. And I have to say I was really impressed with what I saw, and especially in some of those blogs that people put together with their reflections and things people were trying and thinking about. And I'm just excited to think about what people are going to move on to do, and anxious to find out if we really did manage to start a little community of practice in our pro solo environment. I do think students some of them did make that their home and have built a little network for themselves and are building up their competencies, and I think that it can be just a start. They can keep going, and I'm excited to see where it leads.
Great, thanks, Carolyn. I was just speaking with someone today, and they said they just love your enthusiasm, and I'll just validate that as well. For someone who's as busy as you are and as productive as you are, to have the kind of positive, optimistic energy that you have it's terrific. So one thing I just want to follow up on your point there around, and similar to what Ryan was saying, which is there's less activity in the forums than in some MOOCs, more activity in other spaces. Now, obviously, that was intentional and part of the design. But I was even just now just on Twitter looking at the DALMOOC, and it's good to see folks who've started playing. Let's say, if anybody's interested, if you go to Twitter and search the DALMOOC hashtag, there's a concept map that someone was sharing already about how they've started to piece the course together, and it's sort of this in-work process that that learners are able to do in a course like this, where they can share what they've been doing and how far along they are. And it's almost like, in a sense, this atelier model of learning, like a studio model, right? Where you can say, hey, I've done this so far. Any comments? Then someone can come by and say, oh yeah, you know, what about this and this? But it's this ability to not just share a produced product, but to share an in-process product that I think is quite helpful when people start to own where they're contributing on their own blog or on their own site, because they can control that artifact. If they don't want it there anymore in the future, they can delete it. But if you upload it to a faculty site or whatever in an LMS, you lose control over what happens next. But, Dragon, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a great journey, great experience for me as well. First of all, enjoying the time spending to work with the students, also with the best possible co-instructors I could even think of, and interactions we had behind the scene that students probably haven't seen. The course has been as much as rewarding as it has been also challenging and emotionally very taxing. Probably students didn't see. They always saw our happy faces in these Hangouts, but behind the scene, we had really difficult times. One important lesson learned for me, not so much related to the students' experience, but more for instructors. Don't ever launch your new platform together with the course that you are going to teach. It'll be extremely emotionally taxing, especially it will be in the first couple of weeks until you learn to live with the imperfection of some of your ideas. Anyways, other than that, I think there are some really interesting things, and although we didn't do many of these things so intentionally, we did have some of these intentions, but in a way it turned out that this whole course is a composition of four small mini courses. And even recently we noticed some blogs of the students who really loved it, because they actually said this is the right thing that they would like to do. Basically, I don't have to get on board in week 1, 3, or 4, but then I can easily get on board week 5 and 6, and I basically get the piece of information and content that I'm interested in, and I can connect with the people who share similar experiences. And I can see, like, and it was quite also impressive to see some of those conversations in week 7 and 8 when Caroline started introducing text mining. All of a sudden, some new names show up in the course who were extremely enthusiastic about the topic itself, in addition to, of course, some of the regular names that we could see in the social sphere. Of course, where we could do probably better job in the course was weeks 1 and 2, where we probably need to think about different types of scaffolds, and especially in terms of the ways how we can better communicate the types of expectations that are available in the course. In many cases, we really didn't have big focus on the certification and assessment. On the other hand, many students who were taking courses through similar providers like Coursera and edX, they had that type of expectation. So probably matching these types of expectations is something that probably we would need to improve in the future. In addition to that, also helping students even better understand navigation through these dual spaces that we promoted would be another important topic that we need to address in the future. That's what I would share in this round now, George.
Great, thanks. And I'd certainly share the comments that each of you are making. It's been a great group of folks to teach with or to develop the course with. That I think was great. Also want to validate Dragon's statement. The part that Dragon forgot to mention is, which is based out of his own schedule, is don't be in the process of submitting 4 papers to the Learning Analytics Conference the week prior, and don't take a trip to London for an event the week prior as well. So these are all things that can help spike your stress level when you start a MOOC. But no, I think overall the experience of the course has certainly been interesting. There's been a lot of value in the learning experience. It's this idealized notion that I had initially when we started talking about a dual layer MOOC, so to speak, where we wanted to have opportunities for structured and unstructured interactions, and realizing that there's a lot of individuals who are involved in the course who maybe just prefer one or had experience with other MOOCs that ended up being more traditional, and that's what they were expecting. And so this communication of expectations and how we do that, the point Dragon was making at the end, that's such a big thing, and I'm not quite sure how to wrap my head around what we need to do better with that. I think some of the interventions here, I think what we did, certainly what Carolyn's lab did, has been, I think is going to be adopted more broadly by the system. edX, and also have a broader impact with other MOOC providers in terms of help support and in terms of the virtual Carolyn or virtual Ryan or virtual whoever is showing up. I think with ProSolo, some fascinating results in terms of the types of folks that got involved. Certainly ProSolo was a happier space in weeks 1 and 2 than the edX discussion forums, where there was a little bit more pushback to the structure of the course in the edX forums, and we've had some interesting outcomes out of the use of ProSolo as well already, in terms of conversations with institutions or with individuals that would like to see it as part of a competency-based program. So there's a lot of interesting outcomes that have been a byproduct of that. Otherwise, I guess I'd like to turn to the second point now, which is topics. Are there any topics that, as you look at this, you would say, this is what we should have done? And I'll say right up front, when we designed the course, I was the one that was pushing for let's keep it basic and let's not go too heavy. And Carolyn was the one that said let's go harder, make it a challenging, eventful, beneficial course for students. And I was saying, well, not everybody's a CMU student. So we made a lot of design decisions around content. And so thinking of it now, I'll just ask each of you, sort of starting with Carolyn, what's your take on the content, and what should we have done differently or covered more of?
Well, I still would have liked to have seen more options for people in terms of paths through the course. Ultimately, maybe the MOOC of the future, so to say, sort of parallel paths. I think what would be nice is that people could be on their own path with the learning that's comfortable for them, but there would be people at other levels around, some who are further ahead, some further behind, so that there could be some mentoring across these tracks. So that wasn't practical to pursue in this particular MOOC, but I still have this idea that something like that would make the community aspect of the MOOC actually work better.
Yeah, and I should mention, just for others, there was Carolyn had I think a really interesting idea around paths, and I think you used the term spiral curriculum, if I'm correct, or something like that, where you had opportunities, and we found this in the course, and so it's worth looking at perhaps in future offerings or just in different MOOCs. But we found that someone, even just today, somebody on Twitter was saying, I just got to DALMOOC, and this opportunity to sort of have this rolling opportunity. You don't have to start in week. Let's say you get started late in the course or you fall behind a bit, you can pick up the next offering, which might be 2, or the next set of that module, which would be 2 weeks later. And so there's this rotating cycle, so people can keep coming in. I think that's certainly an interesting idea worth exploring. Dragon, anything we missed that we should have done?
Well, obviously this was a very introductory and I would say technique-focused course. So we introduced many different techniques. We spent some time and we tried to do sense making, but probably one of the important ventures would be really to have how many of these techniques can be applied and the knowledge gained in the course be transferred into the very specific targeted application domains. And for that, I am always much more interested in the authentic problem solving rather than kind of providing a generic dry case scenarios for students. So after this course, or basically in combination with this course, providing basic opportunities for students to come up with their own projects, with their own problems, and then trying to apply some of these techniques and work together on some of them. Obviously, ethics and privacies are big things we haven't really touched much on. I think there is much awareness in terms of the importance of those themes. However, there is not much in terms of the practical guiding frameworks that individuals who are in this space can easily pick on and apply them in the future. Obviously, what I'm also especially keen on is moving out from the centralized platforms such as edX into more decentralized environments that are aggregated through the platforms such as ProSolo, and things happening in more personal spaces, so that learning happens in less centralized forms. And obviously it would be also quite interesting to experiment, and I think would be also for many students as well relevant to experiment with different types of assessments, so that some of these credentials that students can get out of these courses can easily be translated into something that they can show into their profiles. Obviously, the certificate of completion of this course is one of those, but I'm thinking more in terms of more domain-specific things. For example, someone would be just interested in text mining, so that we can see how that text mining certification can be better acknowledged and reflected in someone's overall profile. Over to you, George.
Great, thanks. Ryan? Thoughts? What did we miss, content or otherwise?
Well, you know, I liked what was here. I don't think we covered everything. I think there was a lot of stuff missing, but you can't cover everything in this length of time. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I apologize if Carolyn already gave a commercial, but I want to give a commercial for the fact that Carolyn is going to be teaching another MOOC in the not-too-distant future beyond this one, and that's something people should take. Big Day in Education, my other MOOC, will be offered again. That kind of goes into more detail on the stuff relevant to my weeks and goes some methods that weren't covered in this. I think that you can't cover everything. I was psyched to be part of a course that I thought covered some good stuff, and I think it created neat opportunities for people to try different things. So I actually thought it went pretty well, and yeah.
Okay, great. And I think one of the topics, I mentioned this earlier already, is, and I agree as well, Ryan, at the end of the day, you know, I thought things went well. And definitely I'll say again, if you want a deeper dive, a more technical dive, then you know, Carolyn's MOOC. I'm not sure if Carolyn, if you want to, pull together a list of a final email to send out, if you want to share links for people to follow on that as well, just to make sure they're, or just tweet it as well. Okay, so the issue that I thought mainly that we didn't get at enough, which covers it all, is this idea of data privacy and data ownership, and that's such a bag of worms that I don't even want to get into that even here, but that's a topic that we need to be aware of. And who owns that? Who owns the data trails that you generate, and who has a right to look at that and to make decisions on your behalf? So that's something I think that's going to become more and more a topic that folks will need to dive into and look at. Now, in terms of what's next, so one of the things that we have privilege on with this group, and which made this a particularly interesting experience from my end, is that we have folks here that are leaders in some of the major professional societies, if you will, that have an influence on the difficulties, not the difficulties, but they have an influence on the research agenda that relates to analytics, educational research, and so on. So, for example, we have Ryan Baker, who heads the International Educational Data Mining Society, Dragan Gasevich, who is a founder and the incoming president for the Society for Learning Analytics Research, and we have Carolyn Rosé, who is the president for is it the International Society for Learning Sciences?
It's president-elect, so I'm not quite president yet, and it's International Society of the Learning Sciences.
Okay, great. And so all of these are organizations where if individuals want to follow up on some of these opportunities to connect with colleagues, or if you found parts of this course sort of piqued your interest in learning sciences or research in those areas, these are some opportunities to dive into. So I'm going to start with Ryan. You basically bootstrapped the Educational Data Mining Society, and as its first president, it's a society that's grown and been quite successful and drives a lot of the conversation. So, do you want to talk a little bit about why folks should care about IEDMS?
Sure. So, George has mentioned some great organizations. I am a member of all of them. I think I'm a member of Learning Science. I know I'm a member of Learning Science. I think I'm a member of Learning Analytics. But they're all great organizations helping to make the world better. Educational data mining, I think what EDM really cares about is validity of our new discoveries. What can we do with big data that we can really believe that we've learned something that we can trust? We don't necessarily have as much of a great focus on how to use the data afterwards as Learning Analytics does, and I think Learning Sciences, kind of gets really to how you use it for scientific discovery. All three of them kind of have a lot of the same goals, and a lot of the same stuff can appear at all three. We've been around since our first workshops, about a decade ago. Our first conference was about 7 years ago. Important points for you to think about for the EDM Society. First of all of our conference proceedings, free, open access, online to anybody. All of our journal articles, free, online, open access to anybody. So come read our stuff. Another important point, our deadline for paper submissions is about 6 weeks from now. So if you learned some great stuff in the class, you got 6 weeks now to do amazing analyses, submit them to us. If you don't quite have stuff that's ready for a full paper, well, then we have a poster deadline that's not too long after that. Posters are for work in progress. It's reviewed based on topicality rather than based on perfection. So, and our conference is in Madrid, Spain this year. So I hope that I'll see some of you in Madrid and check out our stuff. Thank you. Thanks, George.
Great. No, thanks, Ryan. And certainly your leadership in the field has been significant and is definitely appreciated. Dragon, you want to talk about Society for Learning Analytics Research?
Yeah, thanks, George. My pleasure. Probably one of the most rewarding experiences I've had in my professional life would be the involvement with the Society for Learning Analytics Research, the so-called SOLAR. We kickstarted like in late 2010 when we had our first conference when we started organizing our first conference, which was held in late February, early March in Banff in Alberta, on the temperature of minus 35 Celsius. Probably had one of the best attendance because nobody really wanted to get out of the room. And I remember the times when George approached me maybe 6 months beforehand asking me, oh, why don't we organize a conference in less than 6 months? I was thinking he was probably nuts, but let's try. The idea was really exciting and it worked really, really well. Probably one of the best decisions and the commitments I made in my life. Society for Learning Analytics Research is probably an example how a modern organization should work. It was really grassroots based on the work of several enthusiasts who connected with several different other institutions. So presently we have, I think, 13 or 14 founding members who helped us set up the society, who helped us set up the major events that we have inside of the society. Our premier event is the conference, LAK, Learning Analytics and Knowledge Conference. It will be held in Poughkeepsie, upstate from New York, 1 hour long ride. And so obviously you are all welcome to the conference. The submission deadline already is passed. We had already many good papers accepted for the conference. However, several workshops are soliciting papers, contributions, and also participation in the doctoral consortium as well is welcome. And of course, any other participation in the conference is great. Our another important event, and we dedicate a lot of time and resources, is field development, and that one is called Learning Analytics Summer Institute. This is the third instance of the institute, which will be held in June 2015 at MIT. The institute is primarily focused on the development of the community, exploration of the future important topics, as well as training on the basic skills. So in a way, many of you who got to engage with some of the topics of learning analytics, you are welcome to apply for the Learning Analytics Summer Institute at MIT this summer so that you can advance your skill and further get involved into the community. Obviously, we have a journal which is fully open source. Submissions are welcome anytime. There are also several other possible types of events that can be organized by anybody who is affiliated with Solar or who would like to be affiliated with Solar. Those are Solar Flares, and Solar Flares are local, regional events so that anybody can apply for that event, and we are happy to provide sponsorship and guidance. And at this point, I'm going to probably stop so that Caroline has enough time to present the Learning Sciences Society.
Thanks, Trey. And just before I pass it off to Caroline, I just want to make a small point. So one of the interesting things that we've had a really good opportunity with is the relationship with IEDMS. So Ryan was one of the first folks we reached out to, and they've been involved in organizing the first LASSI at Stanford, the second LASSI at Harvard, and they're also, again, and organizers with us this year as the LASSI event at MIT. Carolyn, over to you. You run, I think, probably the longest serving and largest institution or organization in research in this area, International Society for Learning Analytics Science. So over to you.
Great, thanks. The International Society of the Learning Sciences is, as its name suggests, a highly international research society that has been around for about 2 decades. But before that, many of our community members, a core of our community members, made up the European CSCL community, which still has its own identity and is a thriving sub-community that I'm strongly connected with because of my research in computer-supported collaborative learning. And just because of the history of how things evolved, in our society we alternate between 2 different conferences, the International Conference of the Learning Sciences and Computer-Supported Collaborative Learning. And this is a CSCL year, so we'll be having the CSCL conference this summer in Sweden, and I hope to see many of you there. I think it will be really exciting. I would say that learning analytics is definitely an important area of the learning sciences, but it's not the sum total of what the society stands for. And I would say that, I really see our whole instructor team as fitting within the larger umbrella of the learning sciences, which is really focused on learning, research that studies how learning takes place, also research in how to take what we know about learning and turn it into effective instruction, and also developing new methodologies for being able to study and observe learning. And I would place learning analytics that heading. So definitely learning analytics is alive and well in learning sciences, but it's one of many different interacting research focuses. And yeah, I think it's great. It's really a home for me. I'm a computational linguist, but I really feel much more at home in the learning sciences.
If I could add one quick note about one of the things I think has been the most exciting over the last few years is, I remember 3 or 5 years ago at Learning Sciences going and feeling kind of a little bit like an outsider. Like I was kind of a little out of the mainstream. And I went like last year, and not only was Caroline Rosé, one of the world's leading learning analytics EDM people, now the president, but I felt like it had really, learning analytics, EDM had really kind of entered into the mainstream and become one of the several areas that learning sciences as a community is interested in. I think it's really great to see learning analytics becoming part of the mainstream discourse of the learning sciences. Now we can kind of, we're not quite so much of an upstart, a group of weirdos. Now we're kind of able to take our place and to partner with people doing all the other great things you see at Learning Sciences, all the great qualitative methods, discourse processing methods outside of analytic ones, experimental research. It's really an exciting era to see this area mature and integrate. So thank you, Carolyn, for your leadership in helping make that happen.
Great. I'll second that as well, what you're saying, Ryan. There's a lot of optimism in this area. There's a lot of opportunities for learning analytics, educational data mining, certainly learning sciences to make a better learning process, a better learning experience for students, to help bring along students who perhaps might have traditionally fallen into the underrepresented category without appropriate or relevant support to help them become successful. So the bigger picture really is about making a better education system and about having a bigger impact on the quality of life on individuals that participate in that education system. So that's sort of the broader vision, and these are some societies or organizations that I encourage you to look at. I'll send out an email for each of these societies. You can look at what's available there, the events coming up, also conference event proceedings. There's a lot of good resources here that you can dive into and to get a better sense of the field. So on that note, we're just about a minute over time, so I'll just say a quick thank you again to my fellow instructors here. It's been a great experience. Thank you for being involved in this. Particularly thank you to you as learners in this course. Obviously, the content that you've created, the resources that you've shared, the ideas that you've engaged around has made it a good learning experience, I think, for all of us as well. So we've certainly learned through this process, and thank you for helping us with our own learning experiences as well. On that note, this is the final Hangout for DALMOOC, so thanks all, and take care.
Bye.
Bye.